Good evening. My name is Todd Jordan. I serve as senior pastor here at Strawbridge United Methodist Church, and I am delighted to see all of you here this evening. Welcome to an evening of songs, stories, and solidarity. This is a time of partnership between Strawbridge United Methodist Church, Temple Beth Torah. So members who are here from the church, from the synagogue, welcome to all of you, and any special guests who have joined us this evening as well. Glad that you are all here. A couple of important words before we begin. Right out these doors and to the right are the bathroom facilities. In that same direction, you will also find some coffee, some goodies, and some merch from the rabbis who will be sharing music and stories with us later on this evening if y'all are interested. Strawbridge and Temple Beth Torah have been partners in a number of ways going back for years. I know at one point they were worshiping here in our space regularly. We've done events together. Dan and I are good friends. We talk on the phone and share. We believe that this sense of unity and fellowship is not only a blessing to one another, but an important thing in our world, especially today. So I am truly grateful for all of you being here this evening. I know that you will be blessed. And so at this time, I'm going to invite Rabbi Dan Gordon to come up and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what's coming up tonight.
Thank you so much. In fact, one time Pastor Todd called me, and I saw his name on the caller ID, and you know, somebody once said to me that I had a nervous voice when I answered the phone, and they said, "Are you nervous because I'm calling?" And I said, "I'm nervous when anybody calls." He said, "You mean people don't just call and say, 'Hey, Rabbi, I just called to tell you everything's fine'?" Not too often. He said, "Well, I'm going to do that someday, but not today." So one day I saw Todd on the caller ID, and is this something about a budgetary nature or a ordinance that was passed in Kingwood or something I need to be nervous about? And he had a question about a passage in Genesis. And I was like, oh, wow. We're talking Bible. We're talking Torah with a colleague. How exciting. How exciting. So in the spirit of, and we were just talking in the back here, one of the former confirmation teachers, every year, for several years, confirmation students from Strawbridge would come and experience a Shabbat service, a Friday night service with us. We've got some nodding heads. Were you a kid or a teacher? You just remember. Beth Chenault was the one, or your beloved associate pastor emeritus, perhaps? Emerita. Excellent, excellent. So this week, every week we read something different in the Torah. And it's cyclical. Each week is designated in chronological order, and this week happens to be the week where the Ten Commandments is being read in the Torah. And this is something that we share, obviously. And so in the interest of sharing, one time I was at a summer camp in Georgia, and some camp counselors taught me an interesting way to remember the Ten Commandments. I'm not sure where they got the melody, but it's kind of catchy. You might be able to figure it out. The first commandment that God gave to me, I am the Lord your God. The second commandment that God gave to me, 2, don't make idols because I am the Lord your God. Can we have some help from the choir? The third commandment that God gave to me, 3, no swearing. 2, don't make idols because I am the Lord your God. The fourth commandment that God gave to me, 4, keep the Sabbath. 3, no swearing. 2, don't make idols because I am the Lord your God. The fifth commandment that God gave to me, 5, honor parents. 4, keep the Sabbath. 3, no swearing. 2, don't make idols, because I am the Lord your God. The 6th commandment that God gave to me. 6, do not murder. 5, honor parents. 4, keep the Sabbath. 3, no swearing. 2, don't make idols, because I am the Lord your God. The 7th commandment that God gave to me. 7, no cheating. 6, do not murder. 5, honor parents. 4, keep the Sabbath. 3, no swearing. 2, don't make idols, because I am the Lord your God. The 8th commandment that God gave to me. 8, no stealing. 7, no cheating. 6, do not murder. 4, keep the Sabbath. 3, no swearing. 2, don't make idols, because I am the Lord your God. The 8th commandment that God gave to me. 8, no stealing. 7, no cheat. Did I just do 8? Sorry. The 9th commandment that God gave to me. 9, don't mess up your song. 9, no lying. 8, no stealing. 7, no cheating. 6, do not murder. 4, keep the Sabbath. 3, no swearing. 2, don't make idols, because the Lord your God. The 10th commandment that God gave to me. 10, don't be jealous. 9, no lying. 8, no stealing. 7, no cheating. 6, do not murder. 4, keep the Sabbath. 3, no swearing. 2, don't make idols, because I am your... So, there was once a man with 3 grown children, and he had devoted his entire life to his children. And he wanted to know what that meant to them. And he came up with an idea, and he brought them home, and he said, you each grew up here in this house. I have emptied your rooms. They are now completely empty, and I want you to fill them with a gift that reminds you of what I've meant to you. And a week later, the 3 came back to show what they had shown. The first child opened his door and said, Father, come, look at my room. And the room was filled with precious metals, jewels, so many precious things. And the father said, what does this mean? And the child said, you've always made us feel rich. Regardless of how many resources we had, we've had a rich life with you, and I wanted to give you riches to represent the richness of our life. And the father was pleased with his first gift. The second child said, now look at mine, and opened the door, and was filled from floor to ceiling with books, poetry, manuscripts, sacred texts. And the father said, what does this mean? And the child said, you've always taught us so much. You've given us knowledge and wisdom. These writings indicate how much we've learned. And the third child said, I guess it's my turn now, and opened up the door, and it was filled from floor to ceiling with nothing. It was empty and dark and cold. And the father said, what does this mean? Your brother and sister said I meant riches, I meant learning. To you I mean nothing? And the child said, well, it's not finished, and took a small candle, put the candle in the middle of the room, and said, watch, lit the candle, and in an instant, that room was filled, not just floor to ceiling, but every nook and crack and cranny with light and with warmth. And the father said, what does this mean? And the child said, Father, the light is for the path of what you've shown us and how to live. The warmth is for the love we felt. And so you've shown us how to live, and you've shown us how you feel, but it's a small candle, and it's not going to burn forever. When that candle goes out, there will be a puff of smoke and a glow. And in that moment, we'll remember what you've shown us and how we felt. And the Father was pleased with all of his gifts. And so tonight is a night about sharing a light, about knowing that a little light can make a big warm spark. As Rabbi David was talking early last night about each person has a spark of God inside them. And so I'm going to a short ceremony before our guest artists come up, and it's called Havdalah. It comes from the Hebrew word lehavdil, which means to separate. At the beginning of time, God separated the light from the darkness, the land from the sea. And all those separations were not so abrupt because they bled into something else. When you walk into the sea from dry land, gradually it becomes wet and moist and mud and then water. And at dusk, the light becomes almost gray, and you don't know, is it night or is it day? So the tradition of Havdalah is when 3 stars are visible in the sky, that's when we begin. I didn't mention it before, but is it possible to dim the lights for a few moments? I'm asking the wrong person. I'm asking this person. Well, it doesn't matter. If it's possible, it's possible. If it's not, it's not. Thank you. So there are 3 symbols of the Havdalah: a multi-wick candle, wine, and sweet-smelling spices. And each of these 3 is significant because they all blend. When you drink wine, you have a feeling. You feel a bit of joy. When you smell spices, it remains in your nostrils. And when the light goes out, as I said in the story, there is a glow. And so the Holy Sabbath blends into the rest of the week, and we bring some of that spirit together. What is really interesting that I found out one time is that with this multi-wick candle, if one wick is lit, only one wick, well, it's a small spark. But because the wicks are all close to each other, as they're close to each other, they make a beautiful flame. And as we are close to each other, each spark combines, blends into the world that we share. The words are easy. The chorus goes, la 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen borei peri hagafen. Praised are you, God, creator of all, the spirit of you and of me, who sweetens our lives with the fruit of the vine, reminding us that we're divine. La 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. The next one is for spices. I have a spice box here, and Lauren, my wife, is going to pass around little communion cups filled with spices for everyone to smell. There's probably not enough for everyone here, and so pass it along and share. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei minei bisamim borei minei bisamim. Praised are you, God, creator of all, the spirit of you and of me, who sweetens our lives with the flavor of spice and dreams of a new paradise. La 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 la, ya la 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 la. La 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu, melech haolam, borei morei ha'esh, borei morei ha'esh. Praised are you, God, creator of all, the spirit of you and of me, who brightens our lives with the fire of light and helps us stay warm in the night. La 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 la, ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu, melech haolam, hamavdil ben kodesh lechol, hamavdil ben kodesh lechol. Praised are you, God, creator of all, the spirit of each living thing, who gives us this time at the end of Shabbat with so many reasons to sing. La 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 la, ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. And in that moment, we welcome in the Elijah the prophet, Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Agiladi, Bimhera v'yameinu, Yavo aleinu, Imashiach ben David, Imashiach ben David. And now it's my extreme pleasure. It's so often when we end the Sabbath, then we celebrate. And the celebration today is two very dear friends of mine from Ashland, Oregon, Rabbi David Zaslow, who is the spiritual leader of Havara Shir Chadash, which means a friendship group singing a new song. And there's going to be music and excitement. His wife, Debra Gordon Zaslow, no relation, but we are related as brother and sisters in story. She is a storyteller, and the two of them have a wonderful program to share with us songs, stories, and solidarity. At the end of our time, we'll have refreshments, and Todd mentions there's merchandise. At some point, they'll each talk about the 3 books that are available for purchase if you choose. And thank you so much for being here.
Hi, I'm Pastor Lindsay. I'm the pastor of music and worship here at Strawbridge, and it is such a joy to have you here, to have you all here. And as you were saying just a moment ago, we all have that spark of God within us, and so the choir is going to sing a song for you tonight, written by a man named Mark Miller. The title of the piece is Child of God, and the words are that we are all children of God. So our soloist tonight is Jaden Russell Nelson, and without further ado, I'm going to join the choir tonight, and we're going to sing for you.
No matter what people say or think about me, I am a child, I am a child of God. No matter what people say or think about you, you are a child,
Good evening. My name is Rabbi David Zaslow. It's such an honor to be here. Thank you to both pastors and Rabbi Dan for having us, and thank you for the choir. Can I bring the choir back to Oregon with me for a couple of weeks? What a beautiful, beautiful solo and a beautiful choir. Really fantastic. Thank you. So, the theme tonight of solidarity is really interesting because solidarity doesn't necessarily mean we're one, but it means that we're yachdav in Hebrew, which means we're one in purpose. That there's a unique function in the world for Christians and for Jews and Muslims and Hindus and Buddhists and indigenous peoples. And it's all like part of this rainbow. We're each a different color, but we're part of a singular spectrum of light. Or as my rabbi, Rabbi Zalman Schachter Shalomi, may he rest in peace, used to say, we're like instruments in the orchestra. And Christianity gets one instrument, and Judaism gets one instrument. No one faith gets them all, though sometimes our religions think, well, we should really be getting them all. Tonight, the solidarity is really to celebrate our differences, the differences between us, but like rainbow colors of light. They're all part of this spectrum. So I want to start with just a little simple song. We share much more than we acknowledge. Christianity has borrowed so much from Judaism. Judaism has borrowed much from Christianity, but nobody quite admits it. So when you study the text of the histories, it's like, well, Jesus is original to the church. No, he was a Jewish guy. His name was Joshua. His mother's name was Miriam. But we share a unique bond in what we've learned from each other. And this is also true of Islam. Islam has influenced Judaism and Christianity much more than any of us acknowledge. Well, this is just a little short song. I'm sure some of you know it. It's called the Sanctuary Song. It was actually written by two evangelical Christians in Kentucky, Scruggs and Taylor. Thompson and Scruggs, yeah. And it's really wonderful because it's borrowed right from the Torah, but I love the melody, so we stole it back. You'll see how we did it. Oh Lord, prepare me, do you know this? To be a sanctuary, tried and holy, tried and true. In thanksgiving, I'll be your living sanctuary for you. And this is where you got it from. V'asuli mikdash v'shachanti b'tocham v'anachnu nivarech ya me'ata v'ad olam. Join me. Oh Lord, prepare me to be your sanctuary, tried and holy, tried and true. In thanksgiving, I'll be your living sanctuary for you. Lai, 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 lai. Join me. Lai, 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 lai. Lai, 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 lai. Lai, 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 lai. Do you know Yiddish? Oi, 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 oi. Oi, 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 oi. Now you do. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, ay, ay. So, thank you. So, Deborah and I are going to share some stories and some more songs with you. So, Deborah, please come on up.
Let's see if you got my right height after 42 years of marriage. Almost. I'll make it a little lower. Well, I've actually shrunk over the years, so, in a way, he was right for the past. So we said we're going to share some stories tonight, and we mentioned Judaism and Christianity and Muslim, but we didn't mention Buddhism. And there's a lot of stories in Judaism that there are cognates, or stories that are similar in Buddhist stories and in many other religions throughout the world. So here's a Buddhist story to start you off. There was once a great samurai warrior, and he was known not just for his bravery in battle, but also for his wisdom and compassion. Now, among the entourage of this great samurai was a tea master, whose job it was to prepare the tea ceremony for the samurai. And they would travel from town to town, and wherever they traveled, people would treat the great samurai with reverence, and they would bow down to him and treat him with great respect and honor. And one day the tea master started thinking, I wonder what it would feel like if people treated me with reverence, if people bowed down to me. I wonder what that would feel like. If they would even notice me. And later that afternoon, they had traveled to a new town. And later that afternoon, the samurai was taking a nap. And the tea master walked by the room and he saw that the samurai was sleeping and he had taken off his suit of armor and it was lying there unoccupied. And before he knew it, the tea master had crept into the room and he began to just touch that armor and he could feel the heavy metal and it felt very important. And he thought, I wonder what it would feel like to wear that big suit of armor. I think it would feel so important. And before he knew it, he had slipped himself into and slipped up that suit of armor until he was wearing it. And it felt very heavy. And he felt very important. Before he knew it, he took a step. And oh, it was a heavy step. And then he took another step. And before he knew it, he had walked out into the street. And everyone who saw him, thinking he was the samurai, bowed down to him. And he felt wonderful. And he kept on walking through the streets, enjoying the reverence and the respect that was showered on him. Now, also in this town, wouldn't you know, there was another samurai who was not known for his wisdom and compassion. He was a cruel samurai, and he had heard about the visiting samurai, and he was looking for him to challenge him to a duel. And of course, eventually he met the tea master in the samurai armor, and he said, "Are you the traveling samurai that I have heard about?" Now the tea master was shaking inside the big suit of armor, and all he could do was nod his head. "I challenge you to a duel. Do you accept?" And again, the tea master just shook and nodded. "Tomorrow at noon, be here." And the samurai left. Now the tea master, still shaking, stumbled back to his master, the samurai. He woke him up and he told him, he admitted everything that had happened. And he said, "Can you help me? Could you fight him for me?" And the samurai said, "No, I think this is your battle." But could you teach me how to fight?" The samurai looked at the frail old tea master and he said, "No, I don't think so. But then what will I do? He will surely kill me with his sword. And the samurai said, yes, he surely will. But then what can I do? Let me think about it. And while I'm thinking, please prepare me some tea. So the tea master began to perform the tea ceremony. And I don't know if you know, you may know, that in Japan, the tea ceremony isn't just making tea. It's a very intricate, precise set of rituals. And so the tea master began to prepare the tea. First, he unfurled the mats, and then he very carefully and ritually placed the teacups on the mat. And with each step, he became more and more focused and calm and absorbed in what he was doing. He sifted through the tea leaves, and then he very carefully poured the water until when he was finished, he was completely focused, calm, and centered. And the samurai said, I see what you are to do. Tomorrow, you will face the samurai as yourself. Well, the next day at the appointed time, the tea master showed up not in the armor, but in his tea robes. And he was carrying the armor on his arm. And when the samurai saw him, he said, are you ready to do battle? And the tea master said, not quite. First, let's have some tea. And again, he began to perform the tea ceremony. And again, he began to concentrate on what he knew how to do best. And again, he unfurled the mats and he placed the cups. And with each motion, he brought all of his years of discipline and training into every movement that he made until he was moving totally in harmony in a dance of mutual and beautiful movement. And when he was finished, he looked and he saw that the samurai had bowed down to him. And the samurai said, if you perform in battle with 1/2 of the skill and discipline that you bring to the tea ceremony, then I don't stand a chance. I surrender. Well, the tea master went back to his master, the samurai, and told him what had happened. And the samurai said, today you learned some important lessons. You learned to do what you do best. You learned to know what you were doing, and most important, to know exactly who you are. Now, as I said, there is a Jewish version to this. And the Jewish version goes like this. There was once a great rabbi who traveled from town to town giving sermons, or as we call them, Debra Torah. And he had a driver who drove him to all these different engagements. And one day the driver said to the rabbi, you know, I would like to trade places with you just for today. I'm wondering if you would do that. I have been listening to your sermons for so many years. I know every single word that you say. And I would like to try giving your sermons. And the rabbi agreed. And they changed clothes, and the rabbi put on the coarse muslin outfit of the driver, and the driver put on the rabbi's black coat and black hat, the shtreimel. And when they got to the next town, they got out of the car, and the driver went in as the rabbi, and he gave a sermon, a Dvar Torah, better than the rabbi had ever given, with all of the flourishes and all of the wisdom. And when he was finished, people started asking him questions, and he had been through this too. So he answered all of the questions easily until one person asked him a question that he had never heard before. And he didn't know the answer. And he paused, and he said, That question is so easy, even my driver could answer it. So the Buddhists get by with wisdom and compassion and precision, and the Jews by their wits and the seat of their pants.
So we're going to move from the Jewish story and the samurai story, the Buddhist story, into a Muslim story that I really want to share with you. This is a difficult time between the Jewish people and Islam these days, and it's very, very sad and breaks everybody's hearts, especially all of us who do interfaith work from the Jewish community to the Muslim community. So I really want to dedicate this to the peacemakers. I want to dedicate this to the peacemakers, to an end of war, and to Muslims and Jews who realize that we are cousins with each other. Shalom, shalom, salam, salam. One of my teachers, Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach, may he rest in peace, tells a story. It's a true story. He would travel all around the world and give concerts and do teachings. And one time he was due in Paris for a very, very special conference. And he was in Versailles. And for circumstances beyond anybody's control, there was no way for the plane that he was taking was not going to be able to leave and get him to Paris on time for the concert. So the travel agent, remember travel agents? So the travel agent at the time said, you know, Rabbi Karbach, the only way we can get you there, and this is a little bit sketchy, but there's like one seat left on Mideast Airlines. This is an airline that was based in Jordan, and the travel agent said, you know, it could be a little dangerous for you to go on that flight. So Rabbi Karbach said, well, in Hasidic, in Eastern European wisdom, you always know what to do because you ask a wise person and listen to what they say, or ask a fool and just do the opposite. So he said, Baruch Hashem, thank God, I'm surrounded by fools all the time. So he went to his chevra, to his group of fools, and he said, what should I do? Should I take the seat on the airline? It could be dangerous. And they all said, oh, absolutely not, don't take it, absolutely don't take it. He said, I'm going. So he gets on the airplane, and he's in a black suit, and he has his kippah on, and the plane takes off, and the stewardess walks up to him after they all got settled in, and she said, sir, what's that on your head? He stands up, and he said, I want to tell you 4 things. First of all, I love you. Second of all, you're my sister. Third of all, it's a kippah that I bought in Jerusalem. And fourth of all, I look forward to the day when you and I can dance together in the streets of Jerusalem. Stewardess was very stern, looks at him and says, sir, I have 3 things to tell you. 1, I love you. 2, you're my brother. And 3, I look forward to the day when you and I can dance together in the streets of Jerusalem. And they chatted a little bit, and she found out he's a very famous singer in the Jewish world, and wrote all these songs that are done liturgically in synagogues all around the world. And she said, you know, Rabbi Karbach, could you just wait a minute? I want to tell the pilot that you're here. I know he would be very disappointed not to greet you and meet you. She goes back, tells the pilot. A minute later, the pilot comes out, the co-pilot comes out, the navigator, they put it on autopilot, I guess. They all came around Rabbi Karbach. In fact, Rabbi Karbach says, who's flying the plane? And he looks up and says, okay, we're good. So they chatted a while, they took each other's phone numbers, and we're going to get in touch with each other. And when they left the plane, Rabbi Karbach was saying to the stewardess and the pilot, you know, this is not you and me. This is the children of Ishmael and the children of Isaac meeting. It's not us. We represent Isaac. We represent Ishmael. And I pray together that this bond that we've created will just permeate our worlds. And the stewardess and the pilot said, absolutely. And they were going to get a hold of each other. Rabbi Kalbach gets back to New York City, and about a week later, he reads in the newspaper, on page 3 in the New York Times, that that particular airline had a hijacking, and that pilot and that stewardess were killed in the hijacking. And it broke his heart. And he said, I say the mourner's prayer all the time, all over the world, but I'll always say Kaddish for these two people who lost their lives. And may our people always come together and always feel and know that we're cousins together. He ended the story like this. One of our great teachers, Rabbi Nachman. Rabbi Nachman said, how does war begin? Rabbi Nachman asked, this is what he asked. How does war begin? Rabbi Nachman said, this is what he said. This is how war begins. When a mother or a father put their child to bed at night, and they don't say, I love you, my sweetest child, I love you so much. When they don't say that, that's how war begins. Rabbi Nachman asked, how does peace begin? Rabbi Nachman asked, this is what he asked. This is how peace begins. When a mama and a papa put their child to bed at night, they hug their child and kiss their child and say, I love you so much. You're the most important person in the world to me. I love you so much. Rabbi Nachman said, this is what he said. This is how peace begins. Shalom, 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 salam.
There we go. Thank you, David. So every year on High Holy Days, and High Holy Days for us is when we have Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, and then the 10 days in between, and Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. And for us, it's big stuff. And for me as a storyteller, it's big stuff. And I always try to find a new story, something that I'm very excited about telling. And that year, I ran across a story, and it was a Baal Shem Tov story. The Baal Shem Tov was one of our holy teachers. He was the founder of Hasidism. And this story was called Rabbi and the Language of the Birds. And I immediately liked it because I'm a birder. I don't know, is anybody here a birder? Well, there are a few, okay. And that year, I was learning how to identify birds by their sounds. So the language of the birds, I thought, oh, that's a story for me. But then when I read the story, I didn't quite understand it. Because in the story, Rabbi wants to learn, and the Baal Shem Tov says, no, 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 until he convinces him. And then he takes him on this journey, and he shows him all these details and so on. But you got to pay close attention. Rabbi's attention wanders, and he says, forget it. He waves his hand in front of his face, and he forgets everything. And I didn't really understand why. And when I tell a story, I want to understand the story, not just tell the story, even if it's an entertaining story. For High Holy Days, it has to be a little deeper, and I have to understand the depth of it. So I had come across the story in the spring, and High Holidays was getting closer. It was August, and David and I, long story short, ended up in Italy. David was doing a wedding in Tuscany, and it was August 24th. We were traveling before, and we were in Assisi, as in St. Francis of Assisi, who also knew the language of the birds. Besides the holy Baal Shem Tov knew the language of the birds, also St. Francis did. And it was August 24th, it was my birthday, and I figured this was an omen. This was a sign. I was going to get some revelation about the story that I was going to tell, because if I could see it in the fresco, I did my homework and I looked in the guidebook and I saw fresco number 34, St. Francis gives his sermon to the birds. And I thought, that's the one. That's where I'm going to get my enlightenment. That's where I'll get my revelation. Now, in order to get into the cathedral, you have to walk up a big hill, a steep hill, and you're walking with a bunch of other tourists. And oh, did I mention it was Italy and August? So you can imagine, you can't imagine how hot, because it was 40 degrees Celsius, which translates to 104 degrees Fahrenheit. And we're walking with all of these people. It's like a group sweaty pilgrimage up to the cathedral. And we finally get in the cathedral, and you would think that when you got inside the cathedral that it would be cooler, but you would be wrong, because the cathedral is made of these big heavy stones that all of the buildings in that part of Italy are made of. And you would think that that would protect from the heat, but actually those big stones have been absorbing the heat for months and months, and it's August, right? So you get in and it's even warmer. And if you are sleeveless, which I was, of course, because it was 104 degrees outside, they give you this sort of paper poncho to put on for modesty, to cover your shoulders. And it's made of the same stuff that airline pillowcases are made of. And I don't know if you remember when airlines used to give you pillows, but those pillowcases are made of something that's so particularly synthetic that when you put it on over your sweaty shoulders, it exaggerates any heat that's already there. So I was dripping with sweat and ready for my revelation, but I wasn't going to go right over to fresco number 34, St. Francis gives his sermon. I wanted to build up to it. So I started one by one, and the frescoes on the bottom where we were are the very primitive ones. Upstairs are the Giotto fancy frescoes, but downstairs are these pre-Raphaelite. They almost look Egyptian. They're so flat. And in each of them, St. Francis, they depict a portion of his life. And it seems that he has been endowed with this sort of permanent halo that's supposed to represent holiness, but it actually looks like a pie plate because it's so flat. It looks like one of those picnic paper plates with ridges all around. And so here's St. Francis in his crib, and then the next fresco, here he is having a revelation, and then we go along and we get to St. Francis getting anointed. And with all of this, he has this sort of surreal pie plate riding over his head. And I'm walking through, watching, looking at all these frescoes, and I finally turn the corner, and there it is, number 34, in a little alcove. St. Francis gives his sermon to the birds. And I stand there, and first I'm just happy to be there. And I look at the fresco, and there's St. Francis with his pie plate. He's now grown up, and he's in his robes. And there's grass, and there's trees, all very flat. And there's birds. And they look like Disney birds, like out of Snow White. And they're just flat there, and he's standing there, like a statue, of St. Francis of Assisi that you might see in a garden. and I'm waiting. Now, I have to admit that sometimes I'm a little bit greedy about enlightenment, which isn't good, I know. But I wanted a revelation. Nothing was happening. So I stood there. I had come a long way, and I stood there. And I just stood there and stared at it. Now, people came and went and came and went, and I stood there just staring at it. And then all of a sudden, something shifted. It's kind of like, I don't know if you remember, in the 80s, there was a fad where you'd buy these books, and they'd have these paintings in it, and you'd look at them, and you'd wait till your vision blurred, and then you could see what was going on behind. It was like a 3D. Suddenly you saw 3D, and something shifted in me. And all of a sudden, I think something inside shifted. And I saw what was going on in that fresco. I could see that St. Francis wasn't giving a sermon to the birds. He was simply so present. He was so tuned in to everything there, to the grass, to the trees, to the birds, that he was experiencing the divine flow in everything, because he was St. Francis, and he wasn't giving a sermon to the birds. He was simply a part of the divine conversation. And at that moment, a ray of light came in through the window, and that pie plate lit up like a halo. Okay, I might have imagined that part. But I recognized that state that he was in. I'm not there very often, but I've been there in moments of deep meditation, or in moments of prayer, or when I'm really absorbed in my work. I know what that feels like, to be connected to everything in the universe. But most of the time, I walk around so preoccupied with my thoughts and my cravings that I don't even notice the divine flow going on all the time around me. And I walk by as if the world is just a flat fresco. Now, I told you that I wanted the revelation because I was looking for a story. I was looking at a story, Reb Aryeh in the Language of the Birds, about the Baal Shem Tov. And I thought, how can I take this revelation into the story, and into the story that I was going to tell? The Baal Shem Tov waves his hand in front of Reb Aryeh's face and says, you don't need to know. There are very few people in the world that really fully understand the language of the birds. But you don't need to know that in order to serve God. And I decided to add, the only thing you need to know is Adonai Echad. We say that in Judaism a lot, and it means God is one. But it doesn't just mean like there is one God. It means God is oneness. It's all God. Everything is God. And if we know that, then we can feel the language and the soul of everything. And so, may we all, in the merit of St. Francis of Assisi and the holy Baal Shem Tov, may we all pay attention, tune into the moments, and be present in the universe. And may we all know the language of the birds.
Thanks, Devorah. You know, I was thinking, you remember when when we went into the church, and one of the nuns who didn't speak English and I didn't speak Italian came up to me, and she was signaling me to take my hat off. And I said, no, 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 no. It's my kippah. I have to keep it on. She said, she's signaling, take it off, take it off. And finally I said, oh, I am a pristo Judaico. I didn't know what I'm talking about. I don't know if that's what a rabbi is. Actually, I scraped the car, the rental car at one point, and so the gas attendant said, "What?" He was pointing to it, and he was asking me what happened. I said, "Scrapo." Okay. So I want to tell you this story. This is a true story. In 2011, I was going up to a synagogue, a small synagogue in Portland, Oregon, and leading services. The rabbi was my teacher, my dear friend, and sadly he died. And so for 2 or 3 years, I was kind of an interim going up there and helping the community out as they were searching for another rabbi to replace somebody who's really irreplaceable. Now, this is a small synagogue, and we used to meet in the Presbyterian Church in this southwest section of Portland. And the pastor there, Barbara Campbell, and I became good friends. And of course, we scheduled our services a year in advance. And I would go up there on Thursday, or usually on Friday. And Pastor Barbara called me up one Wednesday, and she said, David, we have a problem. I said, what? She said, well, you know, when we made a schedule and you're going to lead services this Friday evening and Saturday morning, we've overbooked because this Friday is Good Friday. So we don't know what to do, you know, but I have an idea. Why don't we celebrate Good Friday and Shabbat together? Now, I was really quiet. I really loved Pastor Barbara. I said, Barbara, Good Friday is probably the one service of the year it is just impossible for the Jewish people to come into the church, because I'm assuming that you tell the Passion story and maybe use the book of John and maybe use the book of Matthew, neither of which are too kind to the Jewish people. I said, we just can't do it. She says, okay, let's pray about it. And when you come in tomorrow, let's meet in my office late in the morning. And I said, great. I flew up to Portland. I came into our office. And sitting before her was her computer with Microsoft Word version of the New Testament. She said, okay, let's go to work. I went, what, go to work? She said, well, there are disturbing things to you in the story, aren't there? I said, yeah, there's some disturbing things. She said, well, let's work on them. She said, is one of the issues like Judas, because Judas means the Jewish one? Is that a problem? I said, yeah, that's a problem. Yeah, it's kind of a problem. So she does a search and replace of every time Judas is mentioned. She just substituted the name the betrayer. She said, is that better? I said, yeah, it's better. She said, what are some other problems? I said, well, there's so many problems. One of them, for example, it uses the definite article the when it speaks about the Jews. And it's just impossible for the Jews in any country 2,000 years ago to have gotten together and realized that they wanted to turn this teacher, who is a teacher in Judaism, over to the Roman Empire. So it was probably a small band of corrupted priests who were trying to hold on to power. She said, well, let's put that in there. Instead of saying the Jews, we'll say a small band of corrupted priests. To search and replace, she puts it in there. She said, do you like that? I went, yeah, it's pretty good. She said, oh, Rabbi David, you are so courageous to do this. I said, me courageous? This is your scriptures. You're courageous. I've been waiting 2,000 years to do this. We went through the process of cleaning up the book of John and Matthew. Pardon me, pastors, but this is what we got to do sometimes. So she said, can you do it now? I said, I don't know. I still have to check with the community. As I said, this is just, I've never heard of a precedent of Jews doing Shabbat on Good Friday with the Christian community, as much as we're close to your community. So we set up one room in the social hall for the Jewish members of the community who just couldn't really come into the sanctuary while the Good Passion story was being told, even though it was changed. But But nobody went to that. They all came into the sanctuary. And Pastor Barbara and I prayed before we got in. We went into the sanctuary, and you know what tenebrae is? Do you do something like tenebrae here? And what is it, 7 candles? Then So she says to me before we went in, she said, I have a great idea. We're doing a tenebrae service where the room will be darkened. There's 7 candles, the Christ candles. And we eliminate the candles, and we'll light the Shabbat candles first, and they'll be the first candles. The last candles will extinguish are the Shabbat candles. I said, Pastor Barbara, we don't extinguish Shabbat candles. We let them burn. She said, oh, that's even better. The Jewish people's light just shines through. She was just in an ecstatic place, just absolutely ecstatic. So the service was going on, and this is where I do want to put on my prayer shawl for a moment. So I was wearing my prayer shawl, and the communion table was set up, and I was behind the table, and as people were coming up for communion, I was chanting the priestly benediction. May the Lord bless you and protect you. I was chanting it in Hebrew, and I was sitting there like this, chanting as people were coming up, and the room was darkened, just the Shabbat candles were lit. And it was this profound, beautiful moment as I'm looking out into the sanctuary of Presbyterians and Jews sitting together, and I'm sitting behind the table as the communion was taking place, and I'm raising my hands like this, and I'm saying the prayer in Hebrew, and there was a lot of people there, and my arms were getting tired, and so I was stretching my arms out like this, and I realized I was a little too close to the communion table, so I was backing up. Now, just like in your church here, you see that cross you have there? Well, this is a smaller church, and the cross was very low. So I'm backing up like this. I kid you not. I go like this. And I noticed some of the congregants are looking, going, So somebody said to me later, in fact, she said, you look like Jesus if it was an old man, if he lived that long. But I didn't know what was going on. I just felt this incredible moment. I'm standing back there, and this profound sense of deep connection between the community and between myself, between the faith of the Presbyterian Christian community and the Jewish community. The communion was more profound than anything we could do in the ritual. It was more profound than anything imaginable, but this miracle of the cross and the miracle of me being able to just be there and having that honor was really, really profound, really profound. So afterwards, the members of the Jewish community, the members of the Christian community, each went their way. The Jewish community gathered in the social hall, and everybody was just like, wow, this was a miracle. This was a miracle. Now, that was a really small church, and unfortunately, they got absorbed into a larger Presbyterian church for financial reasons over the years. But for 10 years, they did that. Every Good Friday, the Jewish community would get together with the Presbyterians and reenact that particular moment. I mean, nothing can be really reenacted, but we do the best we can, and that's what ritual does, brings us closer together. We have a prayer in Judaism called the Kaddish, the Mourner's Kaddish. And I realized as I was standing there that I had never said Kaddish for Jesus. See, Good Friday is what we would call his yurtzeit, right? So that was the day he was crucified by the Romans. And at the anniversary of someone's death in Judaism, we say the Kaddish for them. And so it was a profound moment for me to realize, pardon me here, that I could say Kaddish for this teacher of the Jewish world whose name was Joshua, and I could honor him. And many, many years afterwards, I would say Kaddish for him. And I've taught this into the Jewish world wherever I go, is to honor Jesus on Good Friday by saying Kaddish for him. The last words of the Kaddish go like this. I could hold it. Useh shalom bimromav, Hu yaseh shalom aleinu, v'al kol Yisrael, v'al kol yoshvei tevel, v'yemru, yemru, amen. May the one who makes peace in the heavens make peace for all of us and for all of Israel and for the whole world. And let us say amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, v'al kol Yisrael, v'al kol yoshvei tevel, v'yemru, imru, amen. May the one who makes peace in the heavens bless this church, bless your synagogue, bless all our people, Jews, Muslims, Buddhists, Hindus, native peoples all around the world as one. Amen. You want to say something about your book?
I think Rabbi Dan has a conclusion, but I wanted to say that David's book, Jesus First Century Rabbi, is out there. Also his book, Reimagining Exodus. And my book is called Bringing Bubby Home. And it's a story of, a true story, of only embellished slightly, of bringing my 103-year-old grandmother, rescuing her from a nursing home and bringing her home to live with our family when we had 2 teenagers. So she lived and died with us. She lived with us for 5 months and died. And it's a story of bringing death into the family and all that comes with it. So I hope that some of you will take a look at that. So, Rabbi Dan.
And I just want to say just a quick word about my book, published by a Christian publisher called Paraclete Press. It's called Jesus First Century Rabbi, and over a 20-year period of time, I just started researching all this stuff that took away the Judaism out of the disciples. Luke's name in Hebrew is Levi. As I said before, Mary's name is Miriam. And how to re-Judaize them in a way to bless the church, to bless the synagogue in what we're doing. And so I hope you'll come take a look at that.
Thank you so much for blessing us with the music and stories. I have made note of those stories, and you'll probably hear versions of that in sermons coming up, so forget that you heard it here tonight. We are having an offering tonight. You'll pardon me, I'm kind of losing my voice. It may or may not make it back by tomorrow, so we'll see what happens. In worship, we are having an offering. We're going to split the offering between Strawbridge United Methodist Church and the Temple Beth Torah. So whatever you put in the plate will be divided. And if you write a check to Temple Beth Torah, they're going to split it with us. If you write a check to Strawbridge United Methodist Church, we're sending half to the synagogue. So just know that we're going to do that. And I think we have some instrumentalists that will play during the offering. I feel like that the offering is not just about what we give to God, but a symbol of we give ourselves to God. We ourselves as an offering. And so inspired by the story of Francis of Assisi, I'd like to bless this time of offertory with the prayer that is prayed in the tradition of St. Francis of Assisi. I'll pray it, and I invite you to pray it silently as we offer ourselves to be instruments of God's peace. So let us pray. Dear God, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born into eternal life. Amen.
As a final gift tonight to both communities who are here, we wanted to end with something written by a famous Jewish duo that speaks to our time, again, thinking about the war overseas and all we can do. So we present What a Wonderful World.
Rabbi David's story about Good Friday is very significant in the partnership between Temple Beth Torah and Strawbridge United Methodist Church. As I mentioned, their students would come on an annual basis to a Shabbat service to learn about Judaism. The first time we came here, we had a pipe burst at our synagogue. One of our very strong leaders, Dr. Hai Penn, who's here tonight, was there early in the morning on a Sunday and noticed that the synagogue had been flooded through this burst pipe. And there was a funeral that afternoon. And I called the church, and of course I got a message machine, because it's Sunday morning, who's answering the phone, but the machine said, if this is an emergency, call, and it gave me a number. And I called that number, and a woman's voice answered, and I said, this is Rabbi Dan Gordon at Temple Beth Torah, and the voice said, Dan, it's me, Beth. And it was Beth Chenault, and I told her what had happened, and she just said two words, come here. And we had the funeral, we had a slideshow, they did a beautiful job, and we didn't have a place to worship, and as Todd mentioned, until we got our synagogue cleaned, they welcomed us here. When we remodeled, they welcomed us here. And then after Harvey, when the place where we usually go for Passover Seder, they welcomed us here. And it was Good Friday. And so while the Methodists were here in the sanctuary, honoring Jesus' yahrzeit, honoring the death of Jesus and what he meant, and preparing for the commemoration of the resurrection a few days later, we were in the, what do you call it? The rec center. I called it the gym. But we were in the other side of the building doing what many teach is the Last Supper. And it was a very, very beautiful, beautiful connection. And that connection remains. We began this evening with Havdalah, about how separation is a blend. And then Rabbi David talked about the rainbow. Or no, you talked about the rainbow. Someone said something about a rainbow. You remember, Lindsay remembers. Yes. And how the color, yeah, because he talked about how we blend, that we are different, we each have our own color, we're distinct, but one blends into the other. So there was a teacher, a rabbi, who was teaching about Havdalah. As I mentioned at the beginning of the evening, we understand the notion of when you can begin Havdalah is when day ends and night begins. And so the rabbi was teaching that officially, technically, astrologically, day ends and night begins when 3 stars are visible in the sky. So, of course, a question came up from one of the students. So if that's when day ends and night begins, when does night end and day begin? And so, like any good rabbi, he said, what do you think? And so they guessed. They made their guesses. Perhaps it's when, from a distance, you can see the difference between a lamb and a goat. The rabbi said, no, that's not it. Another one said, perhaps when, from a distance, you can tell the difference between a palm tree and a fig tree. That's not it either. And they kept on guessing and guessing and guessing until finally the student who asked the question said, Rabbi, you tell us, when is it that night ends and day begins? And he said, when you can look into the eyes of a stranger and see your brother or your sister. Until then, it will always be dark for us. I see a lot of brothers and sisters tonight. And the light of the Havdalah candle will continue as the light within us continues and will continue to blend and continue to go forth for refreshments. Because as we all say, it's all about the food. The books for sale will be to the right. Do you have a name for that room, Pastor? Okay. The books, and Rabbi David and Debra will be glad to sign them for you. The hardbacks are $20. The paperbacks are $10. For you, all 3 for $35. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to Strawbridge United Methodist Church for welcoming us here. Thank you to the Jewish Federation of Greater Houston for giving a gift to help bring the rabbi and his wife here. And tomorrow, from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. at Congregation Emmanuel near Rice Village, 1500 Sunset Boulevard, is a day of learning where many rabbis and scholars will be teaching. Rabbi David will be teaching about his book, First Century Jesus, First Century Rabbi. Deborah will be teaching a workshop about how to find your story and how to tell it. And I will just be giving my own rendition of tall tales and short stories. Deborah's session is at 9 in the morning, David's is at 11:30, and mine is at 12:30.
Thank you all so much. Thank you. Just simply now would invite you go forth in peace and be bearers of the peace of God with all the brothers and sisters that you meet. Amen.